Section 28 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 28, the 8th Circle, Fraud, the 9th Trench, Sowers of Discord.
Whoever could, even with unfettered words, tell fully of the blood and of the wounds which now I saw, though oft he told the tale? All tongues would certainly fall short of it, by reason of our speech and of our mind, whose means are small for taking in so much. If all the people should again assemble, who on Apulia's fortune-ravaged soil suffered of old from all the loss of blood shed by the Trojans, and in that long war, which with its spoil of rings made such high heaps, as Livy writes, who maketh no mistakes; with those who felt the painful force of blows received in waging war with Robert Guiscard, and those whose bones are still heaped up together at Ceperano, where a faithless liar was each Apulian, and near Tagliacozzo, where old Alardo won, though all unarmed. And if of these one showed a limb pierced through, and one a limb lopped off, 'twould all be nothing, compared with this 9th Trench's foul display. No cask indeed by loss of middle board or stave is opened as was one I saw, split from the chin to where one breaketh wind, while down between his legs his entrails hung, his pluck appeared, and that disgusting sack which maketh excrement of what is swallowed. While I on seeing him was all intent, he looked at me, and opening with his hands his breast, he said,
See, now, how I am cloven. Behold how torn apart Mahomet is. Ali, in tears, moves on ahead of me, cloven in his face from forelock down to chin. And all the others whom thou seest here, disseminators were, when still alive, of strife and schism, and hence are cloven thus. There is a devil here behind, who thus fiercely adorns, and to the sword's edge puts each member of this company anew, when we have gone around the woeful road, because ere one return in front of him, the wounds thus made have all been closed again. But who art thou that musest on the crag, perhaps to put off going to the torture, adjudged thine accusation of thyself?
Death hath not reached him yet,
replied my teacher.
Nor to a torment is he led by guilt, but that complete experience may be given him, I, who am dead, must needs conduct him here from circle unto circle down through hell, and this is true, as that I speak to thee.
On hearing him, more were there than 100 who stopped there in the ditch to look at me, and who through their surprise forgot their pain.
To fragile Gino, do thou therefore say, thou that perhaps wilt shortly see the sun, if soon he would not hither follow me, to arm him so with food, lest stress of snow should give the Novarese a victory, which else would not be easily obtained.
When one foot he had raised to go away, Mahomet said these words to me, which done, upon the ground he stretched it to depart. Another then, who had his neck pierced through, his nose cut off as far as 'neath his brows, and who had one ear only, having stopped to gaze in wonder with the others there, opened before the rest his throat, whose neck vermilion was on every side, and said,
O thou that by thy guilt are not condemned, and whom up in the Latin land I've seen, unless too great resemblance play me false, call Pier de Medicina to thy mind, if e'er thou see again the lovely plain, which from Vercelli slopes to Marcabo, and makes it known to Fano's two best men, to Messer Guido and Angiolello too, that they, unless foreseeing be in vain, down here will from their vessel be cast forth, and drowned in sacks near La Catolica, through a disloyal tyrant's treachery. Between the isles Maholica and Cyprus, Neptune ne'er saw so great a crime committed, by pirates, nay, nor by the Argolic folk. That traitor who sees only with one eye, and holds the town, from seeing which, one now is with me here, who fain would fasting be, will to a conference have them come with him. He'll then so act, that 'gainst Focara's wind, they'll stand in need of neither vow nor prayer.
And I to him, point out and show to me, if news of thee thou'dst have me bear above, which is the one who had the bitter sight. Thereat he laid his hand upon the jaw of one of his companions, oped his mouth, and cried,
This is the one, for he speaks not. When exiled, he removed all doubt in Caesar, by saying that a man, when once prepared, ne'er brooked delay but to his detriment.
Oh, how dismayed that Curio seemed to me, who from his throat now had his tongue cut out, yet once had been so daring in his speech. Then one, from whom both hands had been lopped off, raising his maimed arms through the glooming air, so that his blood befouled his face, cried out,
Mosca wilt thou remember too, who said, Alas, what's done is done, a speech which proved the seed of evil for the Tuscan race.
And death, I thereto added, to thy tribe. Then he, as woe on woe he heaped, went off as one would whom his grief had made insane. But I remained to look upon the throng, and such a thing I saw as I should be afraid to tell of without further proof, if it were not that conscience reassures me, the good companion which, beneath the breastplate of conscious purity, emboldens man. I really saw, and still I seem to see it, a trunk without a head, which moved along, as moved the others of the mournful herd, and by the hair it held the severed head, which, hanging like a lantern from its hand, was saying as it gazed at us,
"Oh me!"
With his own self he made himself a lamp, and two in one they were, and one in two. How this can be, he knows who so ordains. When at the bridge's very foot he was, he raised his arm above him, head and all, that he might thus bring nearer to us his words, which were,
Now see my baneful punishment, thou that, though breathing, goest to see the dead. See whether any be as great as this, and that thou with thee mayst bear news of me. Know that Bertrand born I am, the man who gave the youthful king the ill support. Of sire and son I mutual rebels made. Ahithophel by Absalom and David with his malicious goadings did no more. Because I severed those who thus were joined, I bear my brain around with me, alas, severed from its foundation in this trunk. Retaliation thus is seen in me.
End of Inferno, Canto 28. Section 29 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 29. The 8th Circle, Fraud. The 10th Trench, Falsifiers of Metals.
The many people and unheard of wounds had caused my eyes to be so drunk with tears, that fain they were to linger there and weep. But Virgil said,
At what art gazing still? Why is it that thine eyes still rest down there among the wretched mutilated shades? Thou didst not thus when in the other trenches. Consider then, if thou propose to count them, that this trench circles 22 miles, and that the moon is now beneath our feet. Short is the time allowed us still, and more there is to see than what thou seest here.
If thou hadst heeded, I thereat replied, the reason for my gazing there, thou wouldst perhaps have granted me a longer stay. Meantime my leader on his way was going, and I behind him moving, as I made my answer, adding, In that hollow place whereon I kept mine eyes so steadily, I think a spirit sprung from mine own blood bewails the fault so dearly paid for there. Thereat my teacher said,
Let not thy thoughts hereafter break on him. Heed other things, and there let him remain. For at the foot of that small bridge I saw him point thee out, and with his finger fiercely threaten thee. Jerry del Bello I then heard him called. So wholly wast thou then intent on him who formerly possessed Hautefort, that thou, till he departed, didst not look beyond.
Leader, said I, his death by violence, which is not yet avenged for him by any who shared the shame, made him indignant. That, as I believe, was why he went away without addressing me. He thus has caused me to pity him the more. We thus conversed till we had reached the first place on the crag, whence, had there been more light, the next ravine had to its very bottom been revealed. When we o'er Malebolge's final cloister were situated so that its lay brethren could be perceived by us, uncouth laments, which had their arrowheads with pity barbed, so pierced me through and through, that with my hands I closed mine ears. Such pain as there would be, if from the hospitals of Valdichiana, Maremma, and Sardinia, from July until September, all diseases came together in one ditch, such was it here. And out of it there came a stench like that which out of rotting limbs is wont to come. Adown the last bank of the lengthy crag we went, as ever to the left, and then much clearer was my vision toward the bottom, wherein the servant of the Most High Lord, Justice infallible, is punishing the falsifiers she recordeth here. I do not think it were a sadder sight to see the whole race in Aegina sick, when so suffused with poison was the air, that all the animals, down to the little worm, fell dead, and when the ancient race of people, according to what poets hold for truth, out of the seed of ants restored themselves. Than now it was to see the spirits languish down in that gloomy ditch in different heaps. One on his belly lay, and others leaned against each other's shoulders, while another crawled on all fours along the dismal path. Without conversing, step by step we moved, both looking at and listening to the sick, who could not raise their bodies. Two of these I then saw sitting, and against each other leaning, just as a pan against a pan is leaned to warm, and spotted o'er with scabs from head to foot. And never have I seen a currycomb plied by a boy for whom his master waited, or by one who kept awake against his will, as each oft plied upon himself the edge of fingernails for the great rage of itching, which hath else no help, their nails kept scraping down their scabs, as doth a knife the scales of brim, or fish of other kinds equipped with larger scales.
O thou that with thy fingers flay'st thyself,
to one of them my leader then began,
and who at times dost pincers make of them, pray tell us whether Latin any be of those in here, so may thy nails suffice thee for thy work eternally.
We both of us whom thou beholdest here so spoiled are Latin,
answered one who wept.
but who art thou that didst inquire of us?
My leader thereupon said,
I am one who with this living man from ledge to ledge descend, and who propose to show him hell.
Thereat the common back was broken up, and trembling each of them turned round toward me, with others who had heard him by rebound. Then my good teacher drew close up to me, and said,
Say whatsoever thou wilt to them.
Hence, since he so had wished it, I began, So may your memory never fly away from human minds in that first world of ours, but rather under many suns survive. Pray tell me who ye are, and of what people. Nor let your foul and loathsome punishment make you afraid to show yourselves to me.
I of Arezzo was, and Albero da Siena had me burned.
One then replied,
But what I died for doth not bring me here. 'Tis true I said to him, although in jest, that I knew how to raise me in the air, and he, who, curious, had but little sense, wished me to show that art to him, and only because I did not make him Daedalus, he had me burned by one who treated him as son. But to the last trench of the 10, Minos, who may not make mistakes, condemned me for the alchemy I practised in the world.
Then to the poet I, Now was there ever a people as vainglorious as the men of Siena? Surely not the French by far. Whereat the other leprous one who heard me replied to what I said,
Excepting Striga, who moderation knew in what he spent, and Nicolo, who was the first to find the costly use of cloves in gardens where such seed takes root, excepting too the company on whom Kachatashan wasted his vineyard and great forest land, while Dabalyato squandered all his sense. But so that thou mayst know who backs thee thus against the men of Siena, point thine eyes toward me, that well my face may answer thee. So shalt thou see that I'm Capocchio's shade, who meddles falsified by alchemy. And thou, if well I see thee, shouldst recall how good an ape of nature I was once.
End of Inferno, Canto 29. Section 30 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 30. The Eighth Circle, Fraud, the 10th Trench, Falsifiers of Persons, Money, and Words.
When Juno, on account of Semele, was angry with the royal blood of Thebes, as several times she showed herself to be, so fiercely mad did Athamas become, that when he saw his wife approaching him, burdened by her 2 sons on either side, "Spread we the nets," he cried, "that I may take upon their passing lioness and cubs." And thereupon stretched out his cruel claws, and taking hold of one, Learchus named, whirled him around, and dashed him 'gainst a rock. His wife then with the other drowned herself. Again, when fortune so low down had brought the Trojans arrogant all-daring power, that with their kingdom shattered was their king, Hecuba, sad, forlorn, and captive now, when she had seen her dead Polyxena, and in her painful anguish had perceived her Polydorus lying on the beach, out of her senses barked as would a dog, so greatly had her suffering turned her mind. But ne'er did Furies, or of Thebes or Troy, reveal in any one such cruelty, in goading beasts or much less human limbs, as that which I beheld in 2 death-pale and naked shades, who ran around and bit as doth a boar when from the sty let out. One reached Capocchio, and so thrust his tusks into his neck behind, that dragging him, he made his belly scrape the solid ground. The Aretine, still trembling, said to me,
"That imp is Gianni Schicchi, who, enraged, goes all around ill-treating others thus."
Then, "Oh," I said to him, "so may the other not fix his teeth in thee, be not too tired to tell me who he is, before he skips." And he to me,
"That is the ancient soul of wicked Myrrha, who, outside the bounds of lawful love, became her father's mistress. She came to sin with him by counterfeiting another person in herself, as did the other one who yonder goes away, that he might gain the lady of the stud, to counterfeit Buoso Donati's self, and make his will and give it legal form."
When the 2 furious souls, on whom my eyes were fixed, had passed away, I turned them round to look upon the other evil born. And one I saw who like a lute was shaped, if he had only had his groin cut off down in the region where a man is forked. The heavy dropsy which unmates the limbs in such a way with ill-digested humour, that face and paunch no longer correspond, were causing him to keep his lips apart, as doth the hectic, who because of thirst turns one lip chinward and the other up.
"O ye that are, and wherefore I know not, free from all torment in this world of woe,"
said he to us,
"behold and pay attention to Master Adam's wretched misery. When living, I had all that I desired, and now, alas, I crave a drop of water. The little brooks which toward the Arno run, down from the Casentino's green-clad hills, and render all their channels cool and fresh, are evermore before me, nor in vain, because their image makes me drier far than this disease, which strips my face of flesh. The rigid justice which is scourging me takes from the very place in which I sinned the means to give my sighs a greater flight. There lies Ravenna, where I falsified the coin on which the Baptist's form is stamped. For that I left my body burned above. But could I see the woeful soul of Guido, or Alexander, or their brother here, for Fontebranda I'd not give the sight. One is in here already, if the shades who go around here raging tell the truth. But what is that to me, whose limbs are bound? If only I were still so light of foot, that I could in 100 years advance 1 inch, I'd be already on the road, in search of him among the loathsome people. Although this trench goes round 11 miles, and is no less than half a mile across, through them am I in such a family, for they persuaded me to coin the florins, which had at least 3 carats of alloy.
Then I to him said, Who are those 2 wretches who, smoking like wet hands in winter time, are lying there beside thee on thy right?
I found them here.
He answered,
When I reined into this ditch, since when they have not turned, nor will, I think, for all eternity. One is the woman who charged Joseph falsely, the other Sinon, Troy's deceitful Greek. Their burning fever makes them reek like this.
And one of them, who felt aggrieved perhaps at being named so darkly, smote the speaker upon his hard stiff belly with his fist. It made a sound as it had been a drum. Then Master Adam smote him with his arm, which did not seem less hard, upon his face, and said,
Though I of motion be deprived, by reason of my limbs which heavy are, I have an arm that's loose for needs like this.
Then he replied,
When going to the fire thou hadst it not so ready, but just so and more thou hadst it when thou madest coin.
He of the dropsy,
Here thou sayest true, but thou wast not so true a witness there, where thou wast questioned of the truth at Troy.
If I spoke falsely, thou didst falsify the coin.
said Sinon,
I'm for one sin here, and thou for more than any other demon.
Remember, perjurer, the horse,
replied he of the swollen paunch.
and bitter be for thee that known it is by all the world.
I'll be for thee the thirst wherewith thy tongue is cracking,
said the Greek,
and that foul water which for thine eyes thus makes thy paunch a hedge.
Thereat the coiner said,
As is its wont, thy mouth in speaking evil gapeth wide. For though I'm thirsty, and humour stuffs me out, thine is the fever and the aching head, and thou'dst not stand in need of many words, bidding thee lick the mirror of Narcissus.
On listening to them I was all intent, when
Now be careful there,
my teacher said,
for I am not far from quarrelling with thee.
When I thus heard him speak to me in anger, such was the shame wherewith I turned to him, that through my memory it is circling still. And such is he who dreameth of his harm, and dreaming wishes that he dreamt, and thus, as if it were not, longs for that which is. Such I became, who, impotent to speak, would fain excuse myself, and all the while was doing so, but did not think I was.
Less shame would wash away a greater fault than thine hath been.
My teacher said to me,
Therefore unburden thee of all thy sadness, and count on me as ever at thy side, if it again should chance that fortune find thee where folk in such a wrangle are engaged. For vulgar is the wish to hear such things.
End of Inferno, Canto 30.